My name is Ayaka, and I'm a consultant with LSAT Unplugged, usually here with Alyssa. She's out today, but we're both, always here to help. Um, Today, I really wanted to talk about essays, and really this class is called Essays 101, and we really want to talk about, the basics of writing an essay. With the assumption that we know how to write English, but the personal statement, diversity statement, addenda, all of them are asking you to reveal a piece of yourself and to talk about yourself in a way that you're not asked to do on a normal daily basis unless you have a very specific kind of job. So we really wanted to touch on it and kind of talk through how you can get in the mindset of actually writing for your application. So first off, I want to recognize that the writing style and the writing you're being asked to do for applications is pretty unique, and most of us haven't done it since we've applied to undergrad. Some people might have done a similar sort of writing when they applied to a master's program or a different program. So, there's varying levels of experience here, but many times we did it in undergrad and we haven't written like that in some time. So there's no shame, there's no embarrassment out there that writing for your application is kind of difficult. It's a little bit of a journey, and I have to say, most times, 99.9 times out of 100, it's not going to be perfect the first time out, and even the second, third, fourth draft is not going to be the final draft. It takes a bit of time. So I have a checklist for you that I will put up in a second, but I do want to talk through some big elements when I feel like I need to think about before I get into the writing process. So, like I said, the essay writing for applications is pretty different than, the emails you're writing to your coworkers, texting your family, any sort of business proposal writing. It's pretty different. So what makes it different? You're asking for, the application is you asking to be admitted into a program for a professional school. So this is a little bit more different than undergrad. I won't say 180 degrees different, but a little bit different because undergrad, you're talking about potential and blah blah and all that. Here you're really asking for a position in a professional school, and you're saying, here are my qualifications, and that might just be LSAT GPA and some sort of experience you had in undergrad. Some people who have had a career might be a little bit more depth to the qualification. So the ask is a little bit different. Going one step deeper, there are schools that have prompts for, personal statement, diversity statement, impact statements, areas of interest statements, all of those things. There are prompts out there. Some schools say, this is a free topic, talk about whatever you want. I just did an interview with the director of admissions at GW Law, Mr. Matthew Dillard, sorry, blanking on the name. And he was talking about how, it's a moment to get to know the candidate as a person. So it's not a place for you to go on and on about a school and why it's a great fit for you. It's a place for you to tell admissions who you are and how you will show up in a classroom. And that being said, I think there are a few things that you really want to think through when you are writing your essay, when you start writing your essay, or when you start thinking about writing your essay. So before you start writing, I think, one of the things is to think about what is the purpose of the essay. And, most of the time, it's going to be to get to know you, right? And that's still pretty broad. But reading the school's application, if there is a prompt, the prompt will usually let you know what the school is asking you to tell them. So if it is, tell us why you want to go to law school, you want to make sure that your essay answers that question. You don't need to justify the answer, but you need to answer the question. The other piece to that is schools asking for a free personal statement, like a free topic personal statement. The majority of students will still answer the why law school question, because it is a logical question to answer. And, there are schools out there who say, yeah, we don't really require you to tell us why law. However, we want to get to know you. And I find that when you consider you're applying to law school and they're asking, how can we get to know you better? And you're submitting a piece of writing that is 2 pages. You're going to want to reveal something significant about yourself. And I think the reason to go to law school is pretty significant, especially if you've, had some sort of career, or you've studied something specific in undergrad and you're, making this transition to law school. I think that's a pretty significant change in your life that you're making, even if it is something that you've said you would be doing from, the age of 7. If you were like, I'm going to be a lawyer at age of 7, still you are making a decision to apply as an adult. So really think about that topic. Think about whether it answers the question of why law school. I don't want you to feel bound by that question, but if you don't want to answer that question, which is fine, that's up to you, maybe think of it as, these are the things I want admissions to know about me. That includes great qualities about yourself. That can also include big life events that you think, you need someone to know about you, or else they don't know you. There are certain life events that people feel that way about. And so I do encourage you to kind of reflect back on your life and see what would be a good story to tell. I do want to look at picking a topic, and I know we've done a class on picking a topic, so we won't go super deep here, and this is more big picture, but I think one of the biggest mistakes that Alyssa and I see when we're looking at essays, and this happens, I don't want to say a majority, but a good number of times, is the essay or is the story you're wanting to tell about you. A lot of times it's about a parent or an uncle or a friend who went through some legal trouble, who went through some trauma, and it's you observing the event rather than you experiencing the event and telling us your reaction to it. I say this with all due respect. We don't need to know about what happened to your relative that went through a legal issue, right? We want to know what happened. If you're talking about a specific event, what happened to you and how did you come out of it. So it's important to think about that topic more. There are a lot of people who say, my parent went through this legal problem and I helped them out and blah blah. Great story, but make sure the focus is on you, not the parent. And the biggest mistake I see when students come in with those essays is half of the essay, which is probably the first page of the essay, is setting up that story. Like, oh, this happened and my mom went to this lawyer and that wasn't good. And then she went to another lawyer and then, I helped her find another lawyer. Like, the setup is too long and we really want to get to the crux of the story. So make sure that the account of what happened is about you. It's also good to know that, yes, there's only 2 pages most of the time. There are schools out there who might allow for 3 pages, but 2 to 2.5 is a sweet spot for telling a story. The amount of space you use to tell the story matters. And I hope that makes sense. But if your essay, the first page is a setup to the story, I think that's a little bit of a red flag. You might need to get on with the story a little bit quicker, get to the point of the story, and then tell us, what you got out of it, what you did, what are the actions that you've taken out of that, so we can see who you are as a person, your character, and your best qualities. I think a lot of times when we talk about picking a topic, we get a lot of questions around, what is an appropriate topic? Is it too specific to yourself? Is it too deep? Is it too traumatic? And Alyssa is very good about talking about this, and I'll try to do her justice. But I think the topic, if it is a traumatic event, make sure you have processed it and you can talk about it. And not to say that being emotional about it is bad. It's absolutely not bad. But you are applying to a professional school and you want to kind of separate the emotional trauma versus what has happened and how you came out of it. And hopefully the story is that you came out of it stronger. So really think about whether it's an appropriate topic. The other piece to this question of is it an appropriate topic is there are stories out there that people are so attached to telling. People live very rich lives and there's so many things that happen in a person's life, traumatic or not. And people may be very, very attached to telling a specific story. But I do encourage you to consider whether that story expresses you in the light that you want admissions to see you. Is that what you want admissions to know about you? And I do have to say, interviewing a couple admissions officers and consultants, no one is judging anyone on the event that they're talking about. However, every single person says, we want to get to know you, who you are as a person, and an event doesn't define you. Something that happened to you doesn't define you. What would be more revealing about your character and who you are is how you came out of that event, how you've changed, how you've continued, how you've lived on, right? So I would say pick a topic that you have follow through on, and you live the story every day. There are absolutely important stories that people need to tell, but sometimes the law school application is not the place to tell that story. And then, lastly, make sure that topic complements the purpose of the essay or answers the prompt. Sometimes people get way too away from answering the prompt, and then they finish and they're like, oh, it actually doesn't answer the prompt. So make sure it answers the prompt. Or if there is no prompt, make sure it addresses the purpose of the essay. And then last piece about writing your essay is just, this writing, like I said in the beginning, it's a unique form of writing. It's different from, writing a novel. It's different from writing an email. It's different from writing a business proposal. So think about the last time you actually wrote prose. And oftentimes it's years. Unless you're an avid writer that writes regularly, it's probably been a couple years since you've written prose. And it takes a little bit to get back into that process. So if you have some anxiety starting to write your essay, I do recommend doing some practice runs with, either starting a diary and just writing a reflection of what happened that day, or give yourself a couple writing prompts and do one every couple of days before you start writing your essay. A lot of times people get stuck in that starting to write the essay portion because they're not comfortable writing, and writing in prose and writing in a way that is cohesive and understandable. So we don't want people to get stuck there. Getting out the first draft is really, really tough, and it's a huge lift, and I understand that. But if you can get into the habit of writing, not a personal statement, you don't have to write a personal statement every week, but if you can get in the practice of writing some sort of reflection of the week, of the day, of some sort of event in your life, I think it would set you up better to write your personal statement. There are people out there who speak better than writing. That and there are people who are super articulate when they speak, and their writing comparatively falls flat. And knowing whether you're a better speaker than a writer can help you in that first iteration of your draft. Some people, if you are a better speaker, record yourself talking about the story you want to tell, right? Put it in a mic, or have someone on Zoom, have a friend record you, tell the story. If you're a better writer, try writing different versions of the story. Sometimes how we write depends on the mood we're in, how long it's been, how busy we are, how stressed we are. So take a moment to give yourself some practice runs before you write the real thing. Not that you have to write a perfect essay the first go at it, but it will be an easier process. I say all these things because I said this in a very early admission session that we did, where it's really easy to see a progression of someone's writing, and there are essays out there applicants out there who come to us and says, I just want a last pair of eyes to make sure there are no mistakes, nothing. And there are some identifiable sentences or phrases where I'm like, did you write that later than the rest of the essay? Or there are phrases in there where I say, you wrote that in your first draft and you kept it, right? And these phrases, sentences that, maybe you've added way later as you have gotten better at writing drafts and written multiple drafts, or phrases that you've kept from your first draft. Not that that's a bad thing, but they do float a little bit, because over the course of the next couple of months that you're writing, you're getting better every single time. So the way that you've written the first draft, you will sound different in your 10th draft. And that difference is so clear that it will show up and it will be pretty obvious. So if you're going from a 0 to 100 in writing, I do encourage you to do a little bit of a practice run before you actually start your personal statement, because you will have to go back in that 10th, 15th, 20th draft, which is not uncommon, to fix phrases that you wrote in the first iteration that you've kept throughout the drafts, because it sounds a little bit off. Yeah, so that's my 2 cents. And then, can you tell the story that you want to talk about in your essay in 5 minutes? Can you tell it in 2? Can you tell it in 1? Most of us, the majority of us, speak faster than we can write. If it takes you 5, 10, 15 minutes to tell me your story, then you probably need to shave some things off your story. Does your story require a lot of explanation? Does it require a lot of background information? These are all things to consider when picking a story to tell and how to frame it for your essay. You can tell a very, very complicated story, but shave it down. I don't want to say dumb it down, because you're not dumbing down a concept, or but you want to shave down details and maybe some events that you think are super relevant, but in writing a 2-page essay just won't fit on the page. So you really want to think about all of those things. And if it's going to take you 20 minutes to explain your story, you really have to think about what needs to be cut, because usually that story can be split up into a diversity statement, a area of interest statement, a personal statement. Like, there's so many ways, and there are more times than not that I look at an essay and say, well, let's split this up into a diversity statement and a personal statement, because there's too much going on in the essay. So be aware about how much information you're putting into the essay. It's not a let me talk about my job. You really want to talk about how you performed your job, and how you have showed up great at your job, showed up great in the classroom, showed up great at your internship, or showed up great to for your family. It's about that, and not about the internship or the job or the event, right? So we really want to be very tailored and make sure we're not deviating too far. I don't think it's a bad thing for your first draft to be a super long draft. Talk about all the things you want to put out there. Talk about all the things that you want to put out in that essay. And it's easier to trim than to add. So really think about putting all of it out there on the table, and then we can work together on finding where to trim and where we can kind of mold into a different essay maybe, and all of that. So I do have a checklist for you. Let me see if I can share my screen. Here we go. So this checklist really reflects what I just talked about. So it should not be new. It's just exactly what we talked about right now. And it just goes over, let's see, before you start writing, picking a topic and things to consider. This is really quick and dirty. There's a lot of nuance to some of these. Is there a prompt? Well, there's an implied prompt, but kind of take this as your guide when you start writing an essay. It will serve you better. It's like a logic game. It will serve you better to do a lot of work in the beginning, and think about it, and then start writing, rather than start writing and say, oh, I think I need to turn it this way, turn it that way. It's really hard to change directions In an essay, it's not unheard of, nor is it uncommon. Most people need to take their essays in a different direction. However, if you can do some of that work in the front end, it will serve you a lot better as you keep writing your draft. So I do encourage you to take a look at this checklist and, go through, think about what you want to write, why you want to write it, and does it fit for the school you're applying to, the program you're applying to, and hopefully this will serve you better than just going off and writing. And that's all I have for you today. We will be back. Alyssa will be back next week. But thank you all and have a good night.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.